Okay, so with both the Bloc and the Conservatives saying they're going to vote to put in the committee, that means it's down to the NDP, the only party left standing between Canadians and a federal election. If the Liberals keep calling this a confidence motion. Will they support the Conservative motion to create a committee to investigate the WE affair, which the Liberals, as you just saw, have made into a confidence vote? Or will they continue to prop up the Liberal government and keep Canadians away from the polls? Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, joins us now from Ottawa. Great to see you, sir, and I hope you and the family are doing well. Will you support the Conservative motion as the Bloc said they will, or will you oppose it?
So, I mean, we have to take a moment here to look at what's going on. You know, in the midst of a second wave of the pandemic, numbers rising in Ontario and Quebec, people worried about their jobs. Just today in Parliament, there was a number of aviation workers who are saying, we're not going to have a job to go back to. I spoke with restaurant owners who are in agony that they're going to have to let go of their workers that they care about because they can't afford to keep them on. Parents are worried about their kids. It boggles my mind that the Liberal government and Prime Minister Trudeau want to threaten an election over who is sitting on a committee. It is ludicrous. This is bizarro world. This is unbelievable. And to hear the House Leader with a straight face say that this is normal, this is not normal. There's no way to imagine how a government in the middle of a pandemic thinks it's okay to threaten the opposition party for just wanting to hold them to account.
Sir,
now, I might have problems with the Conservative approach.
Sir, can I just interrupt you for...
This is mind-blowing.
But, sir, it can't blow your mind and boggle your mind that much since you were out in BC campaigning in a pandemic election called by the NDP government in BC. You visited ridings days ago. It can't totally boggle your mind that there's a pandemic election when you were just part of one in BC. What's the difference?
It boggles my mind that the Liberal government, that Prime Minister Trudeau would threaten an election over a number of people on a committee. If he went to an election over some matter of principle that helped people out, sure, maybe there would be some way to imagine it. What is unfathomable at this point is that the Prime Minister, the House Leader, the Liberal government think that it's somehow okay to threaten an election, to tell Canadians who are worried in Ontario and Quebec where numbers are rising, say, hey, you know what, I know you're worried, but because there wasn't the right committee struck, we're going to an election now. So hold on that help that you need. That is what is unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, well, listen, it's a fair point that this is suddenly rising to the level of a confidence vote. So, but nonetheless, here we are. I just asked Pablo Rodriguez. He goes, I said, the NDP would certainly work with you, and they don't want this to be a confidence vote. The Bloc and the Conservatives have made their mind up. I said, would you, under any circumstances, be willing to change that? He said, absolutely no. So if they call it a confidence vote and the other two parties here are going to vote for this committee, it's going to be down to you, sir. What are you going to do?
Well, I want to turn this around and say this is not about the opposition. This is actually about a Prime Minister who is looking for an excuse. And that's why I set it up as so unbelievable, because it's not actually about this motion. The Prime Minister doesn't have the courage to say straight up, hey, I want to go to an election, I'm looking for an excuse. They're grasping at straws. You know this, Evan, really well. This is grasping at straws to find an excuse when the Prime Minister should just be forthright and say, hey, you know what? I want an election right now, and we're looking for a reason to go. He should go to Canadians and explain why he wants to go to an election. This is not about the opposition. This is about the Prime Minister. The Liberal government chose to make it a confidence motion. They are choosing to make this a precipice. They're driving their car off the cliff, and I'm saying I want no part of that. They're not going to use me or the New Democratic Party as an excuse. They're not going to hide behind us. If they want an election, they can go and call one, but they're not going to be able to use me as an excuse. We're not going to play that game.
Okay, so this is fascinating. So that either means two things. Either you're going to support them and vote against the committee, or you could recuse yourself, and there's math on that. If the NDP says, you know what, we're not going to be part of this vote on this committee, you recuse yourself, I think the Liberals would have to rely on, the Greens and some independent voters like Jody Wilson-Raybould. Is it possible that the NDP recuses themselves from this vote?
I just want to be really clear, Evan. If there is an election in this pandemic, it's going to be because the Prime Minister wants one. That's what all the signs are showing. This is not, we are willing to negotiate. absolutely to put in place a committee that works. We actually have a proposal. The Conservatives have a proposal. The Liberals have a proposal. And you know what? They're actually not that different. There's minor differences, but it's all about holding the government to account. And there's some small changes. If the goal was finding a committee that worked, we could get to that solution right away. But as we're negotiating, it's becoming more and more clear the Liberals aren't interested in negotiating. The Prime Minister isn't interested in finding a solution.
Right.
He's looking for an excuse.
So I appreciate that. Mr. Singh, I'm hearing you. I just asked Mr. Rodriguez the same thing. They seem hell-bent on making this a confidence vote. They think it is a confidence vote. Okay, that's their choice. It will fall to you, sir. And I know you don't want your fingerprints on an election, but you have three options. You can either support the committee as the Conservatives in the bloc, you could support the Liberals and then try to later find another committee structure, or you can recuse yourself. Have you ruled out any of those three, or what are you going to do tomorrow? Because whatever you say, it's going to fall to you, sir.
It's not actually, and that's what I want to really make it clear. The Prime Minister has set this up because he's looking for an excuse. He's looking for an election. I'm not going to give him an excuse. He's not going to be able to hide behind me. If he wants an election, he's going to have to go out there to Canadians and tell people that he wants an election. And I'm going to make it clear, I've never in this pandemic tried to find an excuse to go to an election. I've always been focused on getting help to people, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm focused on helping people who need it. There's a lot of pain that people are feeling, and I want to be there for the people that need help.
But, sir, I listen, you know I got to press you on this, Mr. Singh, because I appreciate that positioning, but there is going to be a vote. You're an elected member of Parliament. You're elected there to vote. People want to see where you're going to stand up or not stand up. So whether you like it or not, you know, the train's coming down the tracks here. How are you going to vote tomorrow?
Well, I can make it really clear. We're not looking for an election. We're not going to let the Liberals use us as an excuse, use us as cover, hide behind the opposition. If the Prime Minister wants an election, he's going to have to go look Canadians in the eye in the middle of a pandemic and explain why he wants one. We're not going to let him get away with that. We're not going to give him an excuse. We're not going to let him hide behind us.
Are you working throughout the night to try to offer an alternative solution? Are you guys going to keep offering new solutions to try to avoid this thing?
Yeah, our doors are open. We've proposed solutions. We're looking at other ways to get this done. Really, it comes down to, the Liberal government has spent money, and some of it has been spent in a way that's very troubling. And we want to look at why that happened, how we can prevent it. There's some questions unanswered about we want to answer those questions, but we're very focused. We want to get answers for Canadians. We want to hold the Liberal government accountable. They had to be forced to work for people instead of working for themselves. And we want to make sure that that's out there in the public. But again, if the government wants to find solutions, we're ready. We're more than willing to find solutions, but it looks like they're not interested in accountability and they're not interested in finding solutions. They're looking for an excuse to go to an election. The Prime Minister wants an election. I think that's the wrong thing to do, and we're not going to give him an excuse. We're not going to be used as cover. We're going to continue finding ways to work for Canadians.
Okay, listen, we're watching this closely. I really appreciate your time, Mr. Singh, as always. Thank you, sir.
Of course, thank you. Thank you.